Aha bojo, mashi gani dijni kas mangani do dem. Kichime je kamek kijem mando ka satama nishnaben a king. A very long time ago, when the Creator first put the human beings here on Mother Earth, the Creator told the human beings, follow this trail and life will always be good. So all the human beings, they left on that trail together that the Creator had given them. But soon after, the white nation, they left that trail to follow a new one. The rest of the human beings, they kept on that trail. But then, not too long after, the black nation, they too left the trail that the Creator had given them to follow a new trail. The rest of the human beings, they kept on going. But then the yellow nation, they too left the trail that the Creator had given them to follow a new trail. And soon, just the Anishinaabe were left on that trail that the Creator had given them. But for whatever reasons, the Anishinaabe, they too left the trail that the Creator had given them to follow a new trail. Not too long after they left that trail to follow their own, the Anishinaabe, they became sick. Sick in their minds, the way they thought about others, the way they thought about themselves, the way they thought about life. Their bodies became sick with illnesses. Their spirits became sick because they had lost hope, they had lost faith. It so happened that the little boy lived with the Anishinaabe at that time, and he saw that his people were sick, and it hurt his heart. So he took it upon himself to try and help the Anishinaabe. So one day he started walking east, and he walked and he walked and he walked for many days, until one day he came across Turtle. That Turtle looked up at that little boy and asked, "What are you doing wandering out here, little boy?" And that little boy replied that his people were sick, that he wanted to help them. "I'm sorry, little boy, but I don't have that gift yet to help your people. But go back, I'm sure the answer is there." So that little boy, he returned to where he had left the people, but nothing had changed. They were still sick. So the next day he walked south, and again he walked and he walked and he walked for many days, until one day he came across that Shkodebejike, that buffalo we call him. That buffalo asked that little boy what he was doing wandering out there by himself, and once again he told that his people were sick, that he wanted to help them. "I'm sorry, little boy, but I don't have that gift yet to help your people. But go back, I'm sure the answer is there." And again he returned to where he had left the people, but nothing had changed. They were still sick. So the next day he started walking west, and again he walked and he walked and he walked for many days, until one day he came across that big water, and there he met that big fish, the whale we call him. And that whale asked that little boy what he was doing so far away from home, and again he told that he wanted to help his people because they were sick. "I'm sorry, little boy, but I don't have that gift yet to help your people. But go back, I'm sure the answer is there." And again that little boy returned to where he had left his people, but still they were sick. So the next day he walked north, and he walked and he walked and walked again for many days, until one day he came across that Wakshkizimakwa, that white bear. That bear asked that little boy what he was doing wandering out there by himself, and again he told that his people were sick, that he wanted to help them. "I'm sorry, little boy, but I don't have that gift yet to help your people. But go back, I'm sure the answer is there." And once again he returned to where he had left his people, and nothing had changed. One night as he was sleeping, his spirit began to travel through his dreams. And in his dreams he saw himself sitting on this hill, and there the answer would come. Sure enough, the next morning when he awoke, he went and he searched out that hill. He found it just the way he had dreamt it, and he climbed up to the top of that hill, and he sat there for the next 4 days 4 nights without food, without water. Finally, on the 4th day, as he was sitting on that hill, Gnu came and landed beside him. Eagle. That eagle asked that little boy what he was doing sitting on this hill all by himself. And once again he told that his people were sick, that he wanted to help them. I'm sorry, little boy, but I don't have that gift yet to help your people. But I think I know where I can take you. Get on my back. Sure enough, that little boy, he got on that eagle's back, and that eagle had spread its wings, and they started to fly. And they flew until they reached Grandmother Moon. And on the dark side of that moon, that eagle had landed there. And when that little boy got off that eagle's back, in front of him sat 7 elders. Those elders asked that little boy, "What are you doing so far away from home, little boy?" And once again he told that his people were sick, that he wanted to help them. "Ah, your people," they said. "They need to go back to that trail that the Creator had given them. Because that trail, it leads into their mother's womb." And that's one of the creation stories of the Sweat Lodge. They tell us when we go into that lodge, that's that place of healing. That's like going back into our mother's womb. It's the safest place for us to be. Before that little boy left those elders, he asked those elders, "Well, how is it that we should ever find you again, should we need you? Because you sit here on the dark side of the moon. From where we are, we can't see you," he said. "Aha, Geget," they told him. "Yes, you're right." So that's why they tell us at night when we look to the northwest and we see that constellation of the Big Dipper, those 7 stars, they tell us that's those elders sitting up there watching over us. But the next time you look at that Big Dipper and you count those stars, you look at that handle, that second last star on the handle. If you look just a little above it to the left, you'll see this tiny little star. They tell us that's that little boy sitting there with those elders because he earned that right to sit there. When I first heard that story, I was a little boy. My great-grandmother, my cuckoo, told me that story. In 1969, my cuckoo and I were watching TV, this little black and white television, one evening. And what we were watching is we were watching our neighbors to the south who were landing a spaceship on the moon that night. And the very first word they said when they landed on the moon that evening in 1969 is, "The eagle has landed." And I remember that because when they said that, my cuckoo, she turned to me and she said, "Shkena, igiwindamon." You see, I told you. Because it was prophesied long ago that one day an eagle would land on the moon. And it was prophesied that when that happened, our people would once again become well. And that's what's been happening all over Turtle Island since the 70s, 80s, 90s, today. Aboriginal people all over Turtle Island have been standing up and saying enough to the government, enough to the police, enough to the churches, because we have our own ways to heal ourselves. Ironically, in 1969, as the Americans were making history, our Canadian government, it too, was making history. Their little piece of history in 1969 was they were developing this paper they called the White Paper. And the intent of this White Paper was for the total extermination of all Aboriginal rights in Canada. The intent of this paper, this White Paper, was for the total assimilation of all Aboriginal peoples into mainstream society. Ironically, this paper died and was shelved shortly after it was conceived. And today, proof of that, 50 years later is that we're still here and we're getting stronger, we're getting healthier. One of the other teachings that we take from that story is that in life we search for answers. We search all over the place. And sometimes we search for answers through the bottle, through drugs. That little boy, he didn't have to search in the 4 directions to find the answer. The answer was always within him. And that's true for us as well. We just have to look within ourselves to find the answers to those things that trouble us. Aha,